Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is out soon, and if you don't have time to go back and play Final Fantasy VII Remake, and you definitely don't have time to go back and play the original Final Fantasy VII, then here's a quick-ish story recap to get you ready for Rebirth. Sounds kind of ominous out of context. This video will mostly focus on the story that happens in Remake, which is similar to what occurs in the original game, although there were a few changes that were made. First off, the game takes place in the city of Midgar, a steampunk city that is governed by an evil power company called Shinra, who basically run the world. They get the power that they supply from reactors that suck the life force out of the planet. This life force is called Mako, not Mako, which is how I thought it was pronounced pretty much my entire life. As a result, Shinra is slowly killing the planet just so people can lead more comfortable lives. I wonder if this is supposed to be a reference to something. The game begins with members of an eco-terrorist group called Avalanche, who opposed everything that Shinra stands for, taking the train to one of these reactors so they can blow it up. The leader of this bombing mission is a man with a gun for a hand named Barrett, along with three much less important characters: Wedge, who's the fat one, Jessie, who's the girl one, and Biggs, who's Charlie Sheen. Also along for the ride is a mercenary named Cloud, an ex-member of a military group ran by Shinra called Soldier in all caps. Soldier infuses willing participants with large doses of Mako to give them enhanced abilities at the cost of a shorter lifespan. It's worth noting that during this mission, Barrett berates Cloud for having been a former member of Soldier, causing him to have some kind of an episode where he holds his head and there's a whole lot of static on the screen, implying that there may be something not quite right with Cloud's head. Like in the original game, the bombing mission succeeds, save a giant robot fight or two, although in Remake, it's revealed that the president of Shinra, the aptly named President Shinra, as well as the chief security officer, Heidegger, have been watching our lovable terrorists, and they caused the explosion at the reactor to be much more explodey than the Avalanche members intended it to be. Cloud and the gang split up in the city that is now slightly decimated from the reactor explosion. And here's where things start to change a bit from the original game, as we get our first glimpse of Sephiroth, a war hero and also former member of Soldier, who is the big bad of this game, and we're seeing him much earlier than we ever got to in the original game. He tells Cloud to run before vanishing, making you wonder, hey, was this a hallucination or was that really Sephiroth? Cloud then runs into a flower girl named Aerith, who is being swarmed by weird ghosts that only she and then Cloud can see. Shinra soldiers then arrive to capture Cloud, but he manages to escape by jumping onto a train, which just so happens to also have Barrett and the others on board. Everyone arrives back at the Sector 7 slums, where they celebrate about their terrorist attack perhaps a bit too loudly, and then head to 7th Heaven, a bar owned and operated by Tifa, a childhood friend of Cloud, as well as a member of Avalanche, and someone with impeccable martial arts skills. This is also when we meet Marlene, Barrett's daughter. After some banter, Tifa shows Cloud to his apartment in the slums, which is coincidentally next door to Sephiroth. How convenient. Things get oddly sexy. You get a flashback or perhaps flash forward of a bunch of robed guys talking about a reunion of some sort, before we see that this wasn't Sephiroth at all. Instead, it's one of the robed guys with a 49 tattooed on his shoulder. So after some side quests, the Avalanche gang votes to not include Cloud on the next bombing mission. And then there's a mostly inconsequential motorcycle trip where we get some Jessie backstory, learn about the plates, which are the significantly nicer areas that are far above the slums, and we also fight a weird guy named Roche, who I'm only mentioning now because I assume he's going to be in Rebirth, and if he's not, then I have no idea what the point of including him was. Cloud wakes up to a hurricane of those ghosts from before, who swarm everyone, causing Jessie to hurt her ankle. As a result, Cloud has to take her place on the bombing mission. So Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett head to the next Mako reactor and plant the bomb. But before they can heroically blow up another reactor, President Shinra and Heidegger hologram themselves into the area to reveal that they were watching them this whole time and that they're planning on framing Avalanche as traitors, working with Wutai, a rival nation that previously waged war on Midgar, which would turn their heroic eco-terrorism into regular terrorism that could incite another war. Then there's another giant robot fight, which breaks the platform that they're standing on, on, causing Cloud to fall down below. Luckily, there's a church with what must be the softest flowers imaginable, as Cloud survives the long fall by landing on them. In this church is Aerith, who grows her special yellow flowers inside. And after a short chat, they're joined by Reno, a member of a Shinra-operated task force that does all of Shinra's dirty jobs, called the Turks. He's here to take Aerith away by force, so Cloud poses as her bodyguard to protect her. After almost killing Reno and being pulled away by ghosts, Cloud escorts Aerith back to her home in the Sector 5 slums. That's where Cloud meets her mother, Elmira, and also another robed guy who's got one of those number tattoos. They also fight off another Turk named Rude, who, let's be honest, that's just Pitbull. While at the house, Elmira tells Cloud to get out of town and leave her daughter alone, which Cloud agrees to do, but before he can vanish, Aerith follows him and tags along so she can help him get back to the Sector 7 slums. They take a trip through a dilapidated tunnel with weird arm cranes to get back to Sector 7. But as they arrive, they spot Tifa being carted away to Wall Market, a place that is mostly free of Midgar's laws and restrictions, where people can gamble and get hand massages and drink potion juice. Tifa is heading to Wall Market to speak with Don Corneo, the crime boss that runs the place, because he has information that they need. And to get that information, she's going to enter the auditions to become his new wife, which is as weird as it sounds. Tifa is sure that she can handle this alone, but Aerith isn't, and convinces Cloud that they need to break into Corneo's mansion to rescue Tifa. However, a gray-haired guy named Leslie tells them that in order to get into the mansion, they have to be invited to the auditions. Thankfully, they both get invites by fighting in Don Corneo's Coliseum, where they have to do battle with Hell House. Really, Hell House doesn't have much to do with the story itself. I just love Hell House. This victory wins Cloud the favor of the owner of the Honeybee Inn, which is like a strip club or a brothel or a cabaret or maybe all of those things, named Andrea. And after a glorious dance sequence that Aerith gets way too worked up about, Cloud is given a makeover to help him blend in with all the sexy ladies so he can get into Corneo's auditions for a new wife. And after getting gassed at the auditions, which seems like a really weird way to start off a marriage, we meet the creepy Don Corneo, who chooses Cloud as his new bride because, yeah, obviously, look at those cheekbones. Not too long after, Tifa and Aerith beat up everybody in the mansion, and the trio confront Corneo about the information that he has. It turns out that he was hired to look for a guy with a gun for an arm, and was paid to do so by Heidegger. Corneo also reveals that Shinra is planning to drop the plate above the Sector 7 slums in order to wipe out Barrett and the members of Avalanche that reside there. Of course, this would also kill thousands and thousands of people, so the gang sets out to stop this from happening, but not before they stupidly walk over a trapdoor and get sent into the sewers. And after a long trip through the sewers and a haunted train yard, which is not nearly as interesting as it sounds, they make it back to Sector 7 to find Shinra opening fire on Barrett and the others. Aerith splits off from the group to go to 7th Heaven and rescue Marlene, while Cloud and Tifa head up the pillar that supports the Sector 7 plate to help Barrett. When Aerith does find Marlene, there's an odd moment between the two of them that resembles one of Cloud's staticky, head-holding episodes. For some reason, this seems to calm down Marlene and make her trust Aerith. We never really find out what this was about, but it's one of a few moments in Remake that implies that Aerith knows a bit more than we do about what's happening. So anyway, Wedge gets hurt, Biggs dies, Jesse dies, and Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa manage to fight off both Reno and Rude, who have arrived to drop the plate. However, those pesky ghosts arrive and interfere yet again, giving Rude enough time to drop the plate anyway. During all of this, another Turk, named, I'm gonna say Singh, arrives to kidnap Aerith and take her back to the Shinra building. However, as part of the deal to go along with Shinra, Aerith manages to get them to drop off Marlene at Elmira's house so she would be safe. So the plate above the Sector 7 slums drops, and we get a dramatic cutscene, which includes a cameo from Kate Synth. Again, I think that's how that name is pronounced, which is way earlier than we normally get to see the weird cat man. Barrett is able to make sure that Marlene is safe at Elmira's house. While at the house, Elmira reveals that she's not Aerith's biological mother, but instead her adopted mother. She found Aerith and her biological mother, Alfalna, near a train station. Alfalna was gravely injured, and as she died, Elmira took Aerith in as if she was her own daughter. Over time, Elmira discovered that Aerith was a descendant of the Ancients, a long-lost civilization, otherwise known as the Cetra, that could commune with the life force of the planet. We also see in this flashback that Sing once tried to take Aerith away before, but because for some reason they say that she has to come along willingly or the whole plan won't work, they left Aerith alone with Elmira. And they then return to the remains of the Sector 7 slums, where they find an injured Wedge in a top-secret underground lab where Shinra experimented on people and turned them into weird Resident Evil monsters. Really gotta wonder how nobody noticed that. But after seeing this creepy lab, Cloud determines that there's no way that Aerith will be safe at Shinra headquarters, as their scientists will be more than willing to run all kinds of tests and awful experiments on the last surviving member of the Cetra race, especially since Professor Hojo is in charge of the experimental science department at Shinra. Hojo is, of course, one of the biggest creeps in the whole game, which when you consider the amount of creeps in this game, that's really saying something. Hoping that Don Corneo would know an easy way to reach the Shinra building, they head back to Wall Market to chase after him through the sewers, where he's now on the run from Shinra for opening his mouth. Leslie tags along as he wants revenge on Don Corneo because long ago, his fiancée got to be one of Don Corneo's numerous wives, and she mysteriously vanished. Seriously, do not marry this man. However, in the process of trying to get revenge, Leslie fails because he sucks at revenge, and Don Corneo gets away. I mention this now because I assume they're both gonna show up in Rebirth at some point. Leslie gives Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa grappling hooks, allowing them to get to the top of Midgar to the Shinra headquarters. They get inside the building and interact with the Shinra tourist exhibit, where we discover Shinra's true motive: to build a new megacity called Neo Midgar on top of the so-called Promised Land that only the Ancients know about. Also, during this Promised Land video, Sephiroth shows up and demonstrates his filmmaking abilities as he shows everyone his plan to just obliterate the planet with a giant meteor. Speaking of Sephiroth, he's inside the Shinra building, as Palmer, a member of Shinra's board of directors, spots him while he was complaining about not having any butter for his tea. Yes, you heard me right. Soon after, Cloud and the gang discover that the mayor of Midgar, who's an old man named Domino, is actually a secret member of Avalanche, and has been helping them this whole time because they're really bad at being stealthy. They ask Domino how they can get up to Hojo's lab to save Aerith, and he directs them to a fellow Avalanche collaborator within the building who tells them that an important meeting involving some of Shinra's top executives is about to go down, and Hojo will be in attendance. So they make their way up the building to find the conference room where the meeting is going to take place, and Cloud and Tifa spy on the meeting, which of course includes President Shinra, Heidecker, the aforementioned Hojo and Palmer, and also Scarlet, who is cartoonishly evil, and Reeve, the one sole good guy in the upper echelon of Shinra, who is way too not evil to have gotten to this position. The evil members of the board reveal that they're going to discover the location of the Promised Land thanks to Aerith, who is back in their custody, and Hojo manages to creep out everyone at the meeting by just being Hojo. The group manages to get Hojo and use him to get to his lab, but him being the sneaky sneak that he is, he escapes. The gang rescues Aerith, which inadvertently also frees a weird talking cat dog thing named Red 13, who basically becomes a member of the crew. And we get our first glimpse of Genova, an alien being with powerful genetic material that Shinra had been experimenting with. Cloud has one of his episodes and passes out, and wakes up in Aerith's old room within the Shinra building. We also discover through Red 13 that the ghosts that we've been seeing are called Whispers, arbiters of fate who have been correcting destiny. So anytime that they've shown up, it was to correct something that was either supposed to happen or not supposed to happen according to fate. Then somehow Wedge is in the building with Mayor Domino, and he tells them that Avalanche is sending a helicopter to rescue them, so they need to get to the roof. After fooling around in Hojo's inexplicably huge lab for what felt like forever, they make it to the roof where President Shinra gets stabbed by Sephiroth. And then Barrett gets stabbed by Sephiroth too. Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Red 13 then battle Jenova and defeat it, only for it to be revealed that it wasn't Jenova, it was that random robed guy with the 49 tattoo from before. The Whispers then heal Barrett's stab wound because he doesn't die here in the original game, so he's not gonna die here now. Sephiroth escapes, and the rescue helicopter is destroyed by another helicopter carrying President Shinra's son and the new de facto president of Shinra, Rufus. Cloud and Rufus have a cool fight, and Cloud nearly dies but is saved by Tifa. After another giant robot fight, everyone makes it downstairs, where Cloud uses his sick motorcycle skills to take down a bunch of Shinra soldiers, while everyone else crams into a hilariously small three-wheeled truck. And after a long motorcycle chase, they make it to the end of the highway leading out of Midgar. And that's where things really start to diverge from the original game, as in the original FF7, this would just be the end of the Midgar section. But if you thought this game was going to end without a huge Sephiroth fight, then you're just being silly. He shows up, and the Whispers start to pick up. Around this time, we also get our first scene with Zack, a guy who dresses the same and even has the same sword as Cloud, who's facing off against a large force of Shinra soldiers. So it's big battle time, and our heroes fight the literal incarnations of Destiny and Fate, which in terms of scale is pretty damn grand. After beating Destiny, they then battle Sephiroth. After a one-on-one cutscene fight that Sephiroth more or less wins, he says a lot of cryptic stuff about the future, and we head into the end of the game. We see Rufus taking over Shinra, Hojo discovering that Jenova has escaped his lab, causing him to let out the single greatest sound ever, and Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, and Red 13 vow to find Sephiroth and put a stop to his evil plans, presumably after some mini-games at the Golden Saucer. Oh yeah, and Biggs is still alive. I almost forgot about that. He didn't die. That's cool. In addition to all of that, Zack, who dies in the original game, somehow survives his fight against a giant army of soldiers. And the game ends with him dragging an injured Cloud towards Midgar, which implies that with the defeat of the Whispers, fate has been forever altered, which means that some people who may or may not have died in the original game might survive in the future. Who knows? For more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth news and guides, be sure to check out thegamer.com. I'm Jamie Latour, and we'll see you next time.